Welcome back, everybody. It is Gettysburg 159, and you're with the American Battlefield Trust. I'm Garry Adelman, and we are going around the battlefield trying to talk about some of the basics of the battle, then drilling those down into regimental sort of fights, and then talking about some of the soldiers who fought there. And here we are looking over the triangular field. This is Rose Woods right over there in front of me, and you might be able to see the monument to the 124th New York right over there, and you're looking at the crest of Devil's Den, or the edge of Houck's Ridge, depending on how you want to describe it. There's the large witness tree above Devil's Den, and that means that Big Round Top is there, and Little Round Top is almost entirely out of view, but you might be able to see it over there. Now that we've done that, let's talk about the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Here you have the Confederates lined up on the most distant ridge over there. That's called Warfield Ridge, or Seminary Ridge, as it moves further to the north. Over there is Hood's division. Over here is McLaw's division and another Confederate division under a guy named Anderson. These three divisions are the ones doing this attack, something like 15,500 soldiers, all attacking these now famous places: Devil's Den, Little Round Top, the Wheat Field, the Peach Orchard, Cemetery Ridge. It's all those less than 16,000 soldiers doing that. Over here in this sector, of course, you have Dan Sickles' 3rd Corps, about 10,000 soldiers that are stretched out from here at Devil's Den, through these woods, through the wheat field, out to the Emmitsburg Road, the Peach Orchard, and then along that road. They're in the shape of a salient, and the Confederates will attack this position, and General Meade, Union commander, will funnel 15,000 soldiers into Sickles' line to bail him out. Some of those soldiers are going to come all the way around and arrive on and around Little Round Top. Think about soldiers of the 5th Corps really doing that, and that's a whole separate fight. And that fight takes place after this fight. In fact, the fight here at Devil's Den is going to be the first major fighting on this side of the field on July 2nd, 1863. So the Confederates attack, and directly in our front, I mentioned those three divisions. We are talking about Hood's division in front of us. More specifically, we have Hood's Old Texas Brigade, the 1st, 4th, 5th Texas, and the 3rd Arkansas coming directly at us. And you have Ward's Union Brigade occupying this line. You've got Maine troops behind me. You've got New York troops off to my right. I already showed you their monument. Then more New York, Indiana, and Pennsylvania troops into those woods there. But as we stand right here, I got the 124th New York right behind me, and I've got the 1st Texas coming right at me here. 3rd Arkansas into the woods, Alabamians over here. And behind those Texans, behind this 1st Texas, is going to be the 20th Georgia. So there will be multiple attacks across this triangular field. Notably, the Texans come in, the 1st Texas, under a colonel, lieutenant colonel named Philip Work, and they're going to attack up this field here. And as they reach this point up here, behind me, you might be able to see it behind my head, you have Colonel Augustus Van Horn Ellis, 124th New York. They're from Orange County, New York, and they are all of a sudden going to consider charging into the Texans before they can capture some cannons the Union have up there. You've seen the monument before, although the cannons were actually further back under James Smith. Those are New York cannons. And here you have the 124th New York thinking about charging. Their major, a guy named Cromwell, goes up to Colonel Ellis and says, hey, maybe we should charge the Texans. And he is sent back to his post. He's sent back to his post a second time, but the 3rd time he apparently convinces Ellis to charge into the Texans. There's 401 Texans, and there are about 238 New Yorkers here. An uneven fight. In fact, the 238 New Yorkers are the smallest regiment to fight here atop Devil's Den, and they're considering charging into it. Even worse, Ellis is going to go in on horseback saying, the men must see us today, summarizing that a Civil War officer is really supposed to display sometimes reckless bravery in front of their soldiers. And you have him and the major, Cromwell, going in on horseback. You have the lieutenant colonel kind of handling the right side, going in on foot. And you have the Confederates, the Texans, coming toward us. E.P. Derrick is immediately shot in the head at that point. You have a Union guy, James Scott. Derrick was in the 1st Texas. You have James Scott who got a flesh wound sort of in the arm among the 124th New York's line. I think he's in Company B, and you see I'm getting a little bit excited here. He is going to have a flesh wound, and he's waving that flesh wound on his arm around. He's covered in blood. He turned into a wild beast as Ellis and Cromwell and Lieutenant Colonel Cummins all move forward. These 238 men going across this very field here. And the Texans are shocked. They stagger, they break, they run, and the New Yorkers come up that way. But the Texans reform. They start to pour lead into the New Yorkers. At the same time, the 44th Alabama Alabama, half of that unit shows up off in that direction, and now all of a sudden the New Yorkers are facing fire on front and in flank. You have James Scott moving into the field, and he is shot directly through the body, suffers a couple of other wounds as well. He's laying terribly wounded on the slope. Another New Yorker, Noah Bodine Kimbark, is actually shot directly through the lungs, and while he's laying there passed out, he gets shot in both ankles, I think by mini balls, but what terrible luck that would be after you're already wounded. He's laying on the slope of the triangular field. Major Cromwell gets shot closest to the enemy, way down there at the base of the field, and that is when Ellis famously rises up in the stirrups and says, "Your major's down, save him." And the unit rushes forward again. The 124th New York is in great danger making this last charge. They push the Texans back again, but you have Alabamians still flanking them on that side. And in that effort, Ellis is also killed, topples his trusty blade, falling, and he falls headward among the rocks. The regiment surges forward enough to try to secure and do the bodies of their lifeless commanders. You have Lieutenant Colonel Cummins up here on top of the slope, trying to remove Smith's guns from over there, and one of the cannon's carriages are hit actually, and it is hurled against him, and he is wounded. And suddenly this smallest regiment of Devil's Den has lost more men killed than any other unit that fought around here, and they're without a field officer. That's colonel, lieutenant colonel, or major. So now it's under the command of a captain, and here come the Confederates, and here comes the 20th Georgia showing up as well. Their commander is going to be hit in the head by a piece of shell, I believe, and it is a terribly bloody affair on this slope, which is already a carpet of blue and gray and red. Eventually, the Confederates are going to push forward up here at a terrible cost. They are going to become the first ones to capture a few of Smith's cannons, 3 cannons that are left up there. Even Smith was told by the overall artillery commander, Henry Hunt, that he'd probably lose his guns, and so he would. 3 of the 7 guns captured permanently at Gettysburg by the Confederacy came from Smith's battery, and he spent the rest of his life justifying the loss of those particular cannons. But it was an extraordinarily deadly effort for the Texans at this point. Let me read the words of a guy named Berryman. He is actually Henry Waters Berryman, thanks to Joe Owen for providing me all sorts of Texas information, more than I can possibly read, but I do appreciate it. Part of what he says is, and he writes to his mother, sister, and family, "It's the will of God that Newton and myself are permitted to write you all again, bearing the good news of our good health, but it is not so well with all. Poor Mort Murphy was killed in making one of the most gallant charges ever made herefore by the 1st Texas. It was on the 2nd, the great battle of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and that was right here in front of you, if I may. Lieutenant Jones and House fell at the same place. We had 8 or 10 wounded out of our company, all very slightly. Newt was wounded in the head. He was right by my side. It knocked him down. I thought he was killed, but he jumped up and went to fighting harder than ever. I tried to persuade him to leave the field, but he would not leave. He told me if every man left for a slight wound, we would never gain a battle." This is what the Union Army is up against. Lee said Texans always move them. Here we go. The ball that hit him broke the skin about an inch above his forehead. It's now well. Mort was killed 20 yards in front of our lines. He was a good, brave boy. And this guy, Berryman, goes on and on. We have lists of all of the Texans who were killed and wounded at this place. Great information. Texans were very involved. We also know a lot about the New Yorkers. These New Yorkers that moved out, they removed the bodies of Ellis and Cromwell. But one of the captains, a guy named Isaac Nichols, was way down, furthest one down the slope. 2 men went to try to secure his body or get his body back. One was killed, one was wounded. His Bible would eventually be picked up by a Georgian, and then while that Georgian was in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, he opened it up, found the information about who the soldier was, and sent that Bible back to Nichols' family in New York. In the meantime, laying on the slope is Noah B. Kimbark. Laying on the slope is James Scott of the 124th New York. Scott was left for dead, wounded 4 times. Kimbark is told by our Confederate officer to crawl to the rear toward a hospital. He moves just a couple of rods. A rod is, I think, if I'm correct, 16.5 feet, 5.5 yards, and he passes out, wakes up again, ends up in some sort of a barn, but they keep moving the Confederate officers further back, and he is told to move. He is actually left for dead. He said he can't possibly survive, but then a Confederate surgeon came in and actually said, "Oh, that's a lung wound. You're going to survive. The ankles won't be that bad," and he gave him some morphine on the back side of a knife. Thanks to our friends at Ancestry Fold 3 for providing some of this extra information that we're able to bring you today. And James Scott lay on that slope for days until eventually eventually they said, maybe this guy will survive. He survived, and he got a pension, something like $8 a month. Both Scott and Kimbark both fathered 3 or 4 children each after the war. They both survived the war. I think Scott lived until 1807, and Kimbark had 4 kids. Sadly, 3 of them died young. So the stories of the Battle of Gettysburg follow people far past it, and the stories of the Battle of Gettysburg is a lot more than just simply sort of what regiment went where. These regiments are made up of people, and these people are how the Civil War really played out. Thanks to Joe Owen, thanks to Ancestry Fold 3, thanks to the Gettysburg National Military Park for keeping this park in such great shape right now, and thank you all for watching and supporting battlefield preservation and education.